everybody, and welcome to another on-demand event powered by demandDrive. My name is AJ Alonso. I'll be hosting the session today, and I'm joined by fantastic guest Collin Waldrip, current AE and former SDR trainer and manager over at SalesLoft. Collin, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me, AJ.
Of course, yeah. Happy to have you here. Bit of backstory as to why Collin is here. One, we've done stuff with him before. Great guy, knows his stuff. But two, you actually put up a LinkedIn post a few weeks ago, breaking the fourth wall here in terms of timing. But we saw it. It was in regards to running contests and spiffs effectively. Really resonated with me. It's something that we've talked about a lot here internally, and thought it would make for a good webinar topic. So we brought you here, the expert at running contests that people actually care about and will actually perform within. So that's going to be the focus of the session today. Bit of housekeeping before we jump into it real quick. This is a on-demand session, so you might be watching this the day it drops, the day after it drops, 10 years in the future, whatever it might be. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll give you an opportunity to ask questions and shoot over some messages to myself or Collin after the session. But know that this is all pre-recorded, so you can watch it whenever you want, which is great. Power of technology. Before we jump into things, Collin, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to everyone, bit of background about what you do at SalesLoft, sort of how you got here in terms of the guy who posts about contests on LinkedIn, and just a general idea of like what your background is like.
Yeah. So I started at SalesLoft about 6 years ago as an SDR straight out of college. I was an SDR for about 1 year and 7 months. For my first few months, I struggled a good bit. And through that time, I kind of had to figure out which light switches to turn on and which to turn off. And I feel like I always remember that moment. I went through that phase where you say, man, maybe I was not cut out for sales. Mm-hmm. And I overcame it. And so I remember when I was looking at a promotion, that moment always stuck out to me. And so I wanted to be an SDR manager and help other reps through those moments. And so I became an SDR manager. I was a manager for about 2 years. And then after 2 years, enablement came to me. And management is one of the most fulfilling jobs in the world. But when you join management, you're like, I am so excited to coach reps, teach them, what was working for us. And then you get into the management role. It's a lot of people management. It's a lot of meetings. And you actually don't find yourself coaching near as much. And that's what I loved doing. And so enablement came to me and said, hey, what if your only role was to coach and train? And so that's where I transitioned into an SDR trainer role for another 2 years before switching to account executive this year. So I've done a few competitions in my day.
It sounds like you've done everything you can possibly do within the organization on the sales development and now AE side of things, which is really cool. So yeah, I'd love to dig into some of the experiences you've had being part of contests from management and then also running contests and optimizing them internally within SalesLoft. So just to start the conversation, I know that there's a lot of debate, might not be the right word, but discourse, I guess, in terms of what makes up a good contest. A lot of people look at it as sort of a cheap incentive for SDRs to pump up their activity. Some people look at it a bit more strategically. Both sides of the argument bring up very good reasons as to why they're right. So I want to turn it to you as someone who's been part of this world for a while now. What's wrong with most contests that kind of get pushed out there from other organizations today?
Yeah. And I think if anyone's been in management, we've all made these mistakes. But definitely what I experienced is using competition as kind of a lazy checkbox to feel like we're doing something to promote productivity. And so, it's that to say, hey, whoever makes the most calls this week will get $50. And so, especially in a time where I think we're asking reps like, hey, in this climate, we need you to do more and we really need you to be better. I think that goes for management as well. We need to be more creative and we need to put more thought and intentionality behind the competitions, because if we're lazy in the competition, how can we expect reps to not be lazy in the execution? And so I definitely think getting more creative and intentional behind the competitions. Two, I would say that not everybody is always going to care about the prize. And so especially when we think about, all right, it's going to be $50 to whoever makes the most calls, you've probably already lost the interest of maybe half your team because half the team may not care about getting an additional $50. So you've already lost out on half your team caring about this competition. And the other half I found, they may not care about the money. They may just want to win the competition. And so how can we put multiple prizes or find a prize that a lot of people care about to drive the most productivity, and get creative with the prizes and incentives as well. And then lastly, I would say, if we're doing this like every week and we're doing it all the time, it loses its effectiveness. And so if every week you're saying, hey, whoever makes the most calls will win money, at some point you're going to have reps tune out, or whenever you're not holding a competition, they're not going to make calls because they know the following week they'll get an additional $50 if they make their calls. And so I think being creative and spreading them out, and so that we're not just paying them to compete in competitions, because they are actually supposed to be making calls and doing these things in their regular day to day. And so the only, it can't be the only reason they execute their calls is a competition's in place.
Those are three really good points. I feel so creativity, incentive, and I guess the frequency of competitions, the big three that you're seeing as to maybe why at your company you're trying to run contests and spiffs and they're just not working, or they aren't having the impact that you want them to. And I think just based on my own experience as an SDR, I was in the role for a number of years as well. They all resonate pretty heavily with me as well, because looking back at my time as an SDR, I definitely remember there being contests where it is just, a checkbox that a manager says, hey, we're low on activity this week. Let's go ahead and just do a very basic, you get a point for every dial you make, and then whoever has the most points wins. Like, not really that exciting. It doesn't get the people going. Similarly, incentive wise, and this leads me to the question that I'm going to ask, putting up a gift card or $50 to Amazon or whatever might not get people to actually do the thing that you want them to because they're not motivated by it. I know I've been there before. Personally, I'm someone who's very intrinsically motivated. I want to win because winning feels good, because it's good to see my name at the top of a leaderboard, because I like getting a shout out from my manager. Some people want to win because they have extrinsic values and they want that extra cash. But I know a lot of people, there's a misconception that most salespeople are extrinsic. I find that a lot of top performers are intrinsic. I don't know if that's sort of the case that you've seen in both a manager role and an individual contributor role on your side.
Yeah, no, I've seen the exact same thing. Actually, we're just talking about this with someone where if I think about probably the top 5 performers I've worked with, I would label them as intrinsic people. Mm-hmm. And really the prize has never mattered with them. They want to be at the top. They want to win. Yeah. And I've noticed that those people, they usually care more about notoriety or being noticed by leadership to know they're doing a good job. That's what they care about. It's not really the prize. So yeah, I've seen the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You can put together a contest for $1 or $100 and they're going to try and win no matter what. It's like, I think we talked about this in a podcast episode, but you look at the NFL as a comparison and somebody like Tom Brady. As a Patriots fan, I love saying it, but like, he's a dude who just wants to win, right? Like, you put anyone around him, you put any incentive structure in front of him, and he just wants to win because he thinks he's the best. And that's how he looks at success, as just being the best. Whereas some people they want money. They're chasing their next contract and they perform so that they can get paid. So Two different types of people, different ways to motivate. Neither one is right or wrong. You just have to know what your team responds best to then create a structure around that, rather than just dangling $100 in front of them and hope that, people respond to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about then what's good. We know what's wrong with most contests. They lack some creativity. There isn't a lot of thought behind them. They happen maybe too frequently. What are some things that you've done and seen that make a contest or a spiff that you've created worthwhile, that actually motivates the reps that you have and actually produces the results that you're looking for?
Yeah. So I would say the theme is going to be just intentionality. And so I far and away think the best spiff I've ever seen done and I've ever done is, we call it the silver bike. Our CRO used to tell us this story where, someone was leaving a job. I think it was at Apple, and, they had offered way more money. And he said, no, it's been a great run, but I'm ready to leave. And they noticed a picture of a silver bike on the desk and be like, hey, what's that? And they're like, oh, it's this bike that's coming out. It's not everybody can buy it. Like, it's already sold out. And he's like, if I could get my hands on that bike, would you stay? And it's like, that meant a lot to that rep.
Oh, wow.
And so for us, it's finding, talking to your reps and finding out what their silver bike is. And it doesn't have to be something super deep, but if you have a rep who loves golf, instead of, doing a one-on-one, if they need to make more calls, let's say that's what they're working on, and they love golf. It's like, hey, if you give me 50 more calls than our normal metric this week, then I'll get you a round of golf at this club. And like round of golf may be, nice club, $120. You are going to give them $120 in cash, but because it's associated with golf, they care about that prize 10 times more. We had a rep who was building a motorcycle. And so we would just say, hey, we'll give you $100 to go towards your motorcycle. Now, all of a sudden that was associated with that, passion project, they were willing to work for it. And so I think it's finding out, what do your reps care about? What does motivate them? And these individual competitions work way better than any team competition. So far and away, that is, I think, the best competition.
Yeah, I really like that, because it does speak to, like we had talked about, knowing what motivates your reps. That's like one of the biggest keys to unlocking a competition that actually produces results. I'm curious, how do you find that out? Like, as a manager working with your reps, do you I guess set aside time during your one-on-ones to like learn more about them as people, understand what their goals and sort of like overall hobbies look like, to tease that out of them? Or are you asking like, hey, listen, I need 50 extra calls this week. What's something in your personal life that you really care about that I can help you achieve?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely in one-on-ones, you want to be efficient with that time. But I think part of being efficient with a one-on-one is making time to understand, hey, what's going on in life and what's going on in work. And I think over time, after you're talking to your reps in your one-on-one, you kind of find out what's going on in their life and what they care about. If my answer is always like, oh, I got to play this golf course this weekend. And, if I'm talking about golf all the time, I enjoy golf. Or whatever's going on, a rep talking about building a motorcycle, that's what they care about. And so, yeah, I definitely think, especially if you have new reps, it's sitting down and it's asking, what's going on in life, tell me about yourself, but it's also, hey, how would you like to be managed, and having that conversation, which is kind of separate.
Yeah, I like that. What are some other contest structures that you've seen or run that work really well? I know the silver bike, you said, is sort of the peak of what you should be striving for. And for listeners, what I can do is Collin actually created a PDF to kind of detail some of the examples that we're going to go through and how to run these contests. So you'll be able to take it back to your company and run them as well. So silver bike at the peak, you can run that one. What are some other ones that you would recommend people try out within their organization?
Yeah. So I think an easy one, and this is more so for morale, in sales, we get a lot of rejection, right? And so some of these competitions are really not to drive an end outcome. It's just to, let's make the job more fun this week or today. And so one we do, it's just bingo. So it's super easy to set up, where you give everybody a bingo card, and each position on the bingo card is something to accomplish, even if it's getting a no interest on the phone. So one bingo square may be, get a objection. All right. The next one will be like, convert someone to a meeting on the phone, get an email response. So like all these different things that happen every day in the job, you just fill out a bingo card, and you can create teams, or it can be individual, and whoever gets a bingo first or the most bingos on the card win at the end of the day.
That's great.
And so, that's just a fun way. It makes, when you hop on the call, you're kind of thinking about the game of bingo, not so much what's going to happen on this call. And so it increases morale, makes the day a little bit more fun. So I've always liked bingo.
Yeah, and that's so easy to set up, right? Like we've run bingo contests internally here. You can literally go online to like bingoboardgenerator.com or whatever. That might not be a real website. You can double check for me. But there's a way for you to create these no problem and think about like what are reps doing on a daily basis that you want to see more of? What are they doing that you think would help drive better numbers, overall call, like whatever it might be, your kind of goal for the team. You can just set up tasks on a bingo board and, check these off during the day. I think that's a really cool and simple way of trying to get people to do the behavior that you want them to get them to be good at the job.
Yep. And I would say one of the most effective ones I've done that does take a little bit more planning is, we call it SDR Madness, but it's just a bracket style tournament. And we would do this during March Madness. So when basketball is going on
there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what it is each day, one rep goes up against another rep. So everybody is paired up versus someone. And then you just go bracket style. Whoever sets the most meetings that day, and if there's a tie, you go back on a metric you're looking to increase. So for us, it was, if there's a tie, whoever made the most calls today or had the most conversations today on the phone, they advance to the next day. And we've always found that these one-to-one competitions, reps care about them a little bit more because the performance is solely on them, or the outcome is on them, where as a team, you can kind of like stand in the background and let the team perform and you can go unnoticed. But in one-to-one, the pressure's on. And so we've seen that, we'll post the tournament bracket up on the wall to see where everybody's going. And those have been really good. And the prizes for that, we'll do, a monetary prize. We'll also do a video email from the CEO or the CRO to say, hey, I saw that you just won this tournament. That means you just beat out every single SDR in our organization. So I just want to say we're thankful to have you. And that is what I found, like reps getting that recognition from leadership. That's what they care about.
Yeah.
And so we'll have a few different incentives in there.
Yeah. I've seen a few contests that have a similar prize at the end of it, either like a message from the CEO or even like lunch with your boss.
Yeah.
Something that theoretically costs $0 to $25 maybe, based on like where you're going out for lunch or like how you get the CEO to talk to the rep. But like that, like you said, that recognition, that ability to like pick somebody's brain and learn more about what can I do to get that promotion? What do you like about what I'm doing today that I can keep doing? That kind of stuff, like that's what motivates people more so than like, I'm not going to say no to $100, right? But I'd rather sit down with the CEO of the company and have lunch or my boss or whatever it might be. So that's a really cool prize to put at the end of, especially a contest where you are beating out essentially every other SDR in terms of the metric that you want them to achieve. I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Cool. One contest that I did want to ask you about, because I saw you post about it, was the Casino Royale. I know you said that this was a incredibly complicated, sort of complex structure to put together, but it was a lot of fun for the people involved. And I think that's like, when it comes to creating a contest, you want something that gets people excited and encourages them to actually participate rather than just doing what they do on a normal basis and sort of going, this is a normal day, but there are points associated with it, right? Like the Casino Royale is, from what I've heard from you, is really people just sink their teeth into it, get super invested. So talk about that one real quick.
Yeah, so it's definitely been the most fun competition spiff I've been a part of, but it's pretty complex to set up. But what I love about it is you can drive individual, like if you're looking for an increase in productivity for certain reps in certain areas, it can be built into this team-based competition. So what it is throughout the day, we open up bets. And so the first bet may be, who will make more calls today? And this opens up at 8 a.m. Who will make more calls today, rep A or rep B? And then everyone on the team goes and they place their bet on who they think will make the most calls. And then we close the bets. And then an hour later, we'll open up a new bet and be like, hey, for the rest of the day, who do you think will have more conversations on the phone? Rep C or rep D? And everybody votes. And then you can do it teams, like, hey, all together, who will set more meetings? Our EMEA team or our US team today? Everybody places their bets and you can bet on your own team. And then so we'll have all these bets open up and close throughout the day. And then everybody's keeping track. And when you have everybody looking at you like, oh, they bet on me to make the most calls today, I'm not going to let them down.
Yeah.
There's a lot of incentive to
perform
for your team,
Yeah.
And so, and then at the end of the day, how you win is whoever made the most correct bets throughout the day wins the prize. And so it was this really cool way to drive kind of these one-to-one matchups, but everybody's watching and cheering.
That's really cool. Yeah. The fact that you can bet on yourself for that, I think it's crucial, because it's like, who's going to make the most calls today? And you think, well, yeah, I'm going to make the most calls today. Like I'm really motivated to win this contest. I'm going to bet on myself. And then you see other people start betting for you as well. And it's like, oh, now it's not just me betting on myself to do my job well. These other people think I'm going to do my job well. Like you said, I can't let them down. Plus, if I don't let them down, I end up potentially winning this contest. So you get both sides of it there. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, we've focused a lot on phone, but you also, like, if you have a rep where you're working on email writing and you're trying to get a higher reply rate and positive reply rate, then their competition is, who can get a reply first today on an email, this rep or this rep. And so they're going to hone in on that skill. And now you're working on a specific skill with a rep. And so, I love that competition.
Slice and dice it a lot of different ways. Very cool. So actually that segues nicely into the next sort of discussion topic here in terms of how this impacts your team. I know you run some of these contests and you've seen the impact of what it looks like when you run them in terms of the production for the reps on a day-to-day basis. Taking a look at some of the behaviors that you do want to encourage. Like you said, you have reps who you want to help them develop more of an email writing acumen. So running contests that kind of focus on that to help them develop that skill and get better at it. What are some of the other ways that you've used these contests to help develop the team that you have and get them to sort of maybe move from like a C to a B player or even a B to an A player?
Yeah, I think one thing you can get out of it is you get an understanding of where the bar can really be set. So on a day-to-day, you have some reps they're focused on being at the top, but the team as a whole may not feel that way. And so what you can do is, I think you mentioned this, but our old CRO, he came into his last company and he gave some unreal cash prize. I forget what it was, but it was an amount of money that everybody's like, that's game changing. And he said, whoever sets the most meetings this month gets this prize. And what happened was the new bar was set on how many meetings were created because reps all of a sudden, they were just motivated to set meetings. And then what happened was you'd be like, hey, if I know you can do that for X amount of money, I know you can do that every week. So that's our bar. Like, I know this is repeatable because you just did it. And so I think that's one idea behind the competition to drive results is I want to understand where our bar is when everybody's aligned on working their hardest. So I think that's an important one.
Yeah. A little sneaky, but effective, right? Like it kind of weeds out the people who might be like throwing numbers out there. Like you're supposed to be hitting 4 meetings a month or whatever as a rep. And then all of a sudden you do 8 and then 8. And then at the end of the quarter, you've booked 26 meetings because there's whatever, a $10,000 prize at the end of it. It's like, well, have you been coasting by getting 4 this whole time? Do I, as a manager, need to readjust the goals and capacity planning that we've done and sort of our forecasting? Look at the reps. Are they performing at their highest level 100% of the time? You can learn a lot by figuring out sort of the upper limits through contests. It's a really good point.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be on a team level, even on an individual level. If you have a rep who, just hit quota and it's, we've still got 10 days a month left, there's probably kickers already in place, but it's like, hey, I genuinely think you can get to X amount more. Like, let's have a competition, see if this rep can get there. And that rep is now becoming the pace setter for the team of not just quota is good enough, but like, what can we hit when we're going all out all month? And how can we study that rep, what they did, and try to translate that across the rest of the team? But now I know that's possible to hit 10% more than what we've ever done.
Yeah, very true. What about on some more tangible skill-based stuff? I know that when we did some pre-show stuff, you talked about running training, not necessarily or running training around stuff like adopting a new talk track or figuring out some new messaging. And instead of running a contest where it's sort of a classic like quantification of qualification, you're instead incentivizing them to use and reiterate some of that training that they just received. And the more that they kind of develop that skill, the more, points are better in the contest that they'll do. Talk a little bit about some strategy behind that.
Yeah. So one thing we did is, we rebranded a while ago. And when you rebrand, you're telling this different brand story and this different brand message. And so we were reevaluating what our brand message was. And so we did this thing called Sales Loft Idol, but basically each of the reps came in and we just asked them, what do you think Sales Loft does? Like, what does Sales Loft solve for? And everybody gave their answer. And then everybody watched all the answers. And it's interesting because one, you get to see on the team without giving them the script, like, what do they believe it does? And then everybody listens to those. And then everybody votes on what they think is their favorite. And so we're trying to find, like, what does the team find to be, our brand messaging, our talk track? And they get to hear how everybody else on the team perceives, what we solve for and what the company is doing. And so, I think letting reps be involved and things like that, letting them be part of, something like that sales loft idol where they're giving their 2 cents and they're being heard and they're voting on what they think is the best. I think that drives adoption of a talk track. And I always think what I found in management is I could tell a rep, hey, we should be saying this. What really gets a rep to say something is when they hear a top performer say something. That automatically they want to say that thing too. And so it's a lot better to, have that pace setter. If they're saying something, shine light on that. And so that the team says, oh, well, if they're saying that, I should be saying that.
Yeah. This person books twice as many meetings as I do a month. What they do probably works. I should follow suit. Yeah. That's a really good way to put it. Yeah. I know that we've talked a little bit about, I guess, running contests to boost productivity, running contests for morale purposes, like you were talking about, running contests to help adopt something new. What are any other functions of contests in terms of encouraging behavior? Like, what are you trying to get? I guess the final question I would ask is, what are you trying to get out of reps 99% of the time when you're running a contest outside of morale, production, or adoption? Is there anything else that we're missing there?
I think those are the big ones. I think those are the three big reasons you would do it. And I would say for the second piece of production is be really intentional about what you're trying to drive. So, if you have the team that, let's say they're struggling with connect rates. And so we hold a competition to say, hey, whoever can have the most conversations this week, blank prize. And then if someone blows away connect rates because this competition is placed, now let's go study what did they do differently than the normal day-to-day to have more conversations. And then you sit down with them, they say, oh, well, I just did this. And now why aren't we doing that at scale? Why isn't everybody doing that? And then also, set goals. And so what is our connect rate before this competition? After we've implemented something, even if it's a competition, a week later, 2 weeks later, what is our connect rate now and what drove that? And so be intentional about what you're trying to increase. And so if you're doing an email incentive or competition with reps, our reply rate is 4% right now. And so let's do a training and then let's do a competition on who can get the most replies. And then after the training and the 1 week competition, what's our reply rate now? And did we hit our goal for what we want to accomplish to make the most of this time training reps?
Yeah. What I pulled away from that, and I think this is a great takeaway for it, the topic in and of itself is that you have to be intentional about what you do, but additionally, you can use these sort of micro environments, these contests that you're running, to impact more of the macro level metrics or goals that you have for your organization. Like you said, on a micro level, this rep is doing something different from everybody else, and they're seeing 200% of an increase in their connects this week. Can we learn from that? Can management take that, implement it in some capacity, put it into our training process, build some development coursework around it, and have all other reps do that? Because sustainably, this is a better way to get connects. So being able to take those little micro environments and those learnings and spread them throughout the entire organization, I think is a really cool way to look at a contest rather than just, I'm trying to boost morale or boost production in a slice of time. It can be more long-term and sustainable than that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I would ask you, what's one last sort of big takeaway that you want to leave the audience with? Someone who might be considering running contests within their organization, someone who does run contests and maybe they aren't getting the same level of production or engagement that you've seen, trying to learn how to maybe spice it up a little bit. What's one last big culminating piece of advice that you would give them?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to roll out a competition first, I would really understand what your reps would care about. And so there are things, I've had so many ideas where I think this is an awesome idea. And you roll it out and then the team doesn't really care about it. Yeah. And so even though we think something's a great idea, I would talk to your team about it, what they find interesting, what motivates them, and then sculpt this competition around that. And that way you'll drive engagement, participation, production. So.
Love it. Yeah. Involve the reps as much as possible. I've definitely run contests that I thought were the coolest thing in the world and just like nobody did it. And it's like, oh, that's a bit of a blow to the ego, huh? But you got to learn from that. You have to know what resonates with the people on your team and what doesn't. And the only way to do that is to ask them, figure it out, and then build from there. I like that. Yep. Awesome. Well, hey, Collin, thanks so much for hopping on with us and talking through some of your experiences with building contests. Listeners, I'm sure you've got a lot of ideas to take back to your own companies and see if you can build something that motivates, encourages, and helps increase the production of your reps with intentionality. If people want to ask questions about any of the contests they heard today, Collin, or get in touch with you and continue the conversation, how can they do that?
Yeah. So LinkedIn, Collin Waldrip. It's me with, I believe, a couple of dogs on my LinkedIn picture, or email collin.waldrip@salesloft.com. Either is fine.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to include that in the on the page so that you can easily click it and shoot Collin a message. You can feel free to reach out to us at demandDrive as well if you want any clarification on what we've talked about today. All of that contact info will be somewhere on the page that you can click and get in touch with us. But thank you, Collin, for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you, listener, for listening in. And we'll catch you for another on-demand event. Thanks so much, Collin.
Thanks.